Hey, what's up, Jeff?
Hey, so okay, I see the stream has started.
Okay, so I haven't hit. I just started it.
Yeah, I see you in there. That's fine. Um,
Let me cut myself out.
and then make sure the recording is started.
Hold on a second.
Record to local computer like we did last time.
I got to take myself out.
I can't talk. Oh, we got to have clerk. Hold on.
So it's not live yet, is it?
I don't know. Like me out.
Everybody, can you hear me?
Okay, who's the wallpaper?
All right, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you ready?
I am.
All right, fantastic. All right, we're going to go ahead and we'll call this meeting to order. I'll give the invocation. Would you bow with me? Gracious and eternal God, it is you who we seek after today. We pray for your wisdom, your guidance, and your divine direction. Lord God, as we come together to do the business of the people, may you grant us those things that we are in need of. Watch over us, lead us, and guide us through this season. And may we forever do things that are pleasing in your sight. This we pray. Amen. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I pledge allegiance
to the flag
Of the United States of America,
to
and
the republic
for which is
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
justice
all.
for all.
Okay. Madam Clerk, roll call attendance.
Mr. Clark,
Present.
Ms. Davis,
Present.
Mr. Fenoy. Mr. Fenoy. Oh, he is. Okay. Mr. Franum, I believe he's out. Okay. Mr. Garrett.
Here.
Mr. Hassan,
Here.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams. Mr. Bobby Williams,
Present.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Present.
Mr. Marion Williams,
Present.
Mr. Fenoy.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Let me turn this camera upside down. He got it sideways.
Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir.
All right, we've had a brief conversation about the addendum agenda. And on the addendum agenda, we're striking items 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 And so we'll go from top to bottom with the primary agenda and then the addendum items being added to the agenda without objection.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again, Mr. Mayor? I'm sorry.
We'll go from top to bottom with the addendum items being added without objection.
Okay. So,
Number
All right.
one, on the regular agenda, number 1 from the addendum, number 2 from the addendum, and number 5.
okay, all right. From the regular agenda, item number 1, motion to approve Augusta pay policy.
All right, Chair recognizes Administrator Sims. Administrator Sims.
Good day, Commissioners, Mayor. As we continue to confront this unprecedented challenge with COVID-19 that presents to our workforce, we must be mindful that even though we have significantly reduced our operation, there are many employees who physically report to work in order to protect, in order to continue to provide vital services for our citizens. Having employees continue to report to work potentially place them at higher risk because they are unable to shelter in place, which has been ordered by our government. In an effort to recognize this an additional level of danger, which many of our employees are placed with, I'm recommending to the Commission to approve hazardous pay for those employees. My staff and I have presented 3 scenarios for you all. One with $1.67 per hour, one $2.25 per hour, and the third option is $3.33 per hour. The financial impact of each scenario has been presented in our spreadsheet that was provided to you all. The recommendation is for the $3.33 an hour, which equates to approximately $500 per employee per month, which may vary slightly from department to department based on each departmental differential schedule. We think this is in line with other municipalities as far as the hazardous pay, and we would recommend the $500 per month for our employees. We also have listed the departments that will be impacted, as well as some support departments that also are impacted. With this recommendation, certain departments we are recommending fully, such as the Sheriff's Office, the Marshals, RCC, as well as EMA. As far as the departments that we know that they have scaled back as best as possible, we're recommending a 25% as far as cost for those employees, personnel, planning, engineering, recreation and parks, central services, finance, procurement, IT, as well as human resources. And the reason why we're asking for these departments is because they still have to provide vital services to our operations in order for us to continue to operate. The dollar amount that we're recommending is $893,317. I also have our Finance Director, Donna Williams, on the line to ask or answer any questions you all may have.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, so if you want to ask questions, just hold your thumb up and I'll recognize you in that order, if you will. Administrator Sims, I want to go back to the 25% allocation, and in particular with regards to the folks in transit. I am concerned about them being at 25 when they are absolutely on the front lines of this conversation. We're going to have a conversation specifically about transit in just a moment, but I do want to hold with regards to that. I think that this is a very good approach, but I do caution us with regards to that. All right, anyone else? Anyone else? Do I see any hands? All right, I'm going to go to the commissioner from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
That list that just been read out about those employees, there are some other groups I think that's going to be necessary when you talk about utilities and people working outside. Shouldn't we have put everybody in the pot before we start talking about the amount? Just a question.
Well, they're included in that. They're included in that list. Utilities is included. In fact, Jarvis, while he didn't go through the complete list, they are also included in that list. A complete rundown would be the sheriff, the marshals, RCCI, animal services at 100%. And then you've got fire and 911 at 100%. And the 25% category will be planning, engineering, recs and parks, central services, finance, procurement, IT, EMA, and then building inspections, environmental services, utilities, stormwater, and transit. They're at 25%.
That's correct.
Okay, that helps me understand a little bit better. You want to make sure we include everybody, and that's going to be, affected by the service that we got to provide.
Okay.
That's correct, Commissioner. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention those others as well, but they're also included in the spreadsheet.
Is there anybody else that should be included or that we talked about it?
I think we recognize all the departments that are still maintaining operations that are not working remotely.
Mr. Mayor,
Attorney Brown.
I just could not hear exactly what the administrator his last comment.
His comment was that they've included generally everyone that meets the requirements of essential critical infrastructure workforce employees. That they meet that requirement. That's what that does.
I think you, Attorney Smitherman, of course, her role is critical in this, and she's in the law department, so the law department should be included. Administrator Sim had asked me that question previously, and I did not get back to him with an answer.
And are you suggesting that she would be included in the 25% category under EMA?
No, she should be under the law department.
Okay.
Got a question,
So what you're saying is that there's one employee on the law department.
I think it should be 25%, which equals two people. I come in, and I'm of course not including myself, but I do have to have a staff member come in to keep the operations going. I have to have at least one administrative person here.
All right. So let's do this. Let's do this right here. So it's not to one get bogged down with that. I think the matter that is before us is the amount and the period of time that we're paying. That can be worked out in terms of adopting the policy, because that's the motion that's in front of us. All right, so let me get some additional comment. All right, I'm gonna go from the 9th to the commissioner from the 10th. I've got all of the hands. I wrote them down. I got you. Commissioner from the 10th, go ahead.
I've been having my thumb and my finger up.
Well, you have, and I've written your name down as well.
I thought you're gonna start with the 9 and go down.
Well,
Call him the 10.
I'm going in the order that I saw the hands. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Commissioner from the 10th. Commissioner, if you unmute. All right, start over.
Okay, I have 3 questions. One is the Animal Services Department included in that pay?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. Number 2 is everybody that is considered non-essential and working at home, they're still getting full pay, aren't they?
That is correct.
Okay, will they be receiving any additional hazardous pay?
They're not included in this.
Thank you, sir. The third, and I think you addressed this, Mr. Mayor, is when we adopt the policy, we will adopt the length of this, will we not?
Well, that's a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner from the 6th.
9th.
Well, I recognized you a moment ago. I'm going back to the 6th.
All right, go ahead.
If you weren't done, Commissioner, I do apologize.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Oh. Commissioner Hassan, would you unmute your microphone?
Hold on.
Okay.
Come on, son, be
Yeah,
smart.
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My first questions, are we anticipating the possibility of being reimbursed for services here by the around GMA around this pay policy?
Administrator Sims.
At this time, I'm not aware of that. I have reached out to some other cities, and they are also doing some similar things, but at this time, I'm not aware of any reimbursement.
Okay, Ms. Miller, why I asked that question was for a conversation a couple of us was having, and that was just wondering if we was going to be pursuing that, could we actually extend this beyond the governor's decree? Because like if he says the 13th at this point, and then we said the 25th, will they honor that? Right now, you said we're in no man's land. We're not quite sure. So I'll move on. I won't worry about that this time because we don't seem to have an answer. How well we're going to try to be reimbursed.
Commissioner Hassan, if you can suspend for a moment, there are two things that can happen as it relates to that. I want to recognize Director Donna Williams. Donna.
Ms. Donna?
Okay, did I unmute myself?
You did.
Okay. We have continued to dig around in all of these acts that come through, and as y'all know, they're pretty lengthy, and so we're struggling to try to get some of this. We're relying on ACCG, NACO, GMA, whoever we can find. And what we have discovered related to the hazardous pay, we think, beginning this morning, was in what they call the CARES Act. And it states that Georgia is going to get 4.1 and some change $billion, and the 4 counties that have over $500,000 population, they're going to get $614 million of that money, which leaves $3.5 billion for everybody else. It speaks to eligibility that in order to be reimbursed, that they must be necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the coronavirus. They were not accounted for in the budget most recently adopted, which would be our 2021, which these expenditures are not in there. And that they must be incurred during the period that begins March the 1st and ends December the 30th of this year. So just relying on those 3 sentences, it appears that this may be a qualified expenditure. As we've kind of cautioned before, working through these things is not 100%. The rules tend to change, and typically sometimes expenditure is not reimbursed really quickly. But based on what we have dug up this morning, it would appear that this type of incremental pay could be a qualified reimbursable expenditure.
All right, so let me qualify that as well. That is a true statement pursuant to what Director Williams just said, Commissioner Hassan, and the rest of us, based on what we know, the challenges around the population cap that was in the CARES Act. We're not one of those counties that is of 500,000 or greater. And so we're going to be getting an appropriation that's predicated on the remainder of us who don't meet that population cap criteria. So the remaining $3 billion will be dispersed around what effectively, from a county perspective, will be the remaining almost 150 counties that are left that don't meet the 500,000 criteria. So that right there holds true. So I'll pause there. You still have the floor. Commissioner Hassan, you got to unmute your microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Is it mute now?
You're fine. You're fine. While he's talking, let me also add the following. That there are 911 and fire, they have separate funds that these resources will come from. It won't be a hit on the general fund. All other departments will come from the general fund, with the exceptions, again, of fire and 911. All right, Donna.
Donna, unmute your mic.
Okay, there's a little delay in me hitting the button and it actually working. These additional funds would come from the home fund of each department. So right. Utilities would also come from utilities.
Okay.
Environmental services would come from that fund. If there are expenditures from the stormwater personnel. It comes from, so in general, the hazardous pay, the incremental pay follows the home department fund for each employee. That's probably the clearest way to state it.
Okay.
All right, I'm ready. Can you hear me now, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I want to go back. Also, thank you for all of that. But also, as Attorney Brown mentioned, I had written down the law department, the administrator's office, and the clerk's office. I think, as we all know, just over the weekend itself, as some of those persons worked, and we got these agendas back and forth stuff. So they was working over the weekend as well. So I think as you put that together, all those should be considered. You said we'll discuss it later time. Just want to put that out there. My next part of this conversation, Mr. Mayor, is, as you all know, the sheriff resent something he had sent previously, and I was the one that was asking him this morning for the note, if you saw the attached to it, that someone asked him how did he come to the figure, which he had about $11 an hour or something at the green. He sent that. I do realize that is a tall order, and I see we're being recommended around $3 and something. So we may, before we close this out, we may look at, do we want to raise the amount, that hour there, consider that as well. So I'm through, Mr. Mayor. I'll pass the floor up. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. I'm going to the commissioner from the 3rd.
Damn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Williams, I know that these are coming out of those other funds, and I mean, do you feel like they can handle these additional costs? And do you approve and recommend the same level that the administrator recommended? What was it, 333?
That's correct.
911
Looking at the
fund.
budget.
Yes, 911 fund may have some issues because they are supported partially by the general fund. Utilities is going to be okay. Now transit only has 3 employees that belong to us. So the difference between 25 and 100% is not a huge jump. But as you know, transit is heavily dependent on the general fund, but the amount that we're talking about at this increment is really not substantial. I don't think I got back to can the budget handle it at this point. Cash wise, we most certainly can. They're, finding that this may be included as possibly a reimbursable item surely adds some a level of comfort to the person that's sitting in my chair. So that's kind of where we are right now. We are, barely 3 months into this current fiscal year. Do we know how this whole situation is going to affect us right now? We don't. We really don't.
And one other question, I guess this is to the administrator, Mr. Mayor. Are the department heads on board with this? I mean, the ones that will have to cover this cost.
Yes,
Have they been a part of this discussion?
The deputy administrators have spoken with their directors. Yes, ma'am. The departments that are being impacted.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you. All right. The commissioner from the 1st.
Do you have the 4th on the list anywhere there?
I do, sir.
All right, just wondering.
Patient.
Never been had that.
Write his name down. Commissioner from the 1st. Unmute your microphone.
How do you am I unmuted?
You are.
You fine? Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, one of my concerns is that we have employees that are putting not only themselves at risk, but their families at risk during this crisis. And I know that we cannot afford to give them an additional $11 an hour. But since this may be, we may get reimbursed, then I think that we could do better than $3 and some change an hour. Commissioner Son have already talked about the clerk's office, the clerk commission. I'm assuming that's who he was talking about. And I do think that they need to be included. But I guess my biggest question is, even though the bus drivers are not work directly for the city, is there any way we can include them? Because they are really at risk with all of the people that they come in contact with. And I saw on CNN a couple of days ago where a transit driver, somebody coughed on the bus, and 2 weeks later he died. So I'm wondering if there's any way that transit could be included in this.
Okay, so I'm going to go back and just very quickly reiterate that transit has been included in these considerations. That is in the list. That is the most recent document that was sent out from the administrator's office that lists the categories of employees who are included that meet the essential critical infrastructure workforce criteria. As such, they are included on that list. So transit is there. And again, they are under consideration along with a host of other entities and departments. So they're included.
But my concern about transit, Mr. Mayor, is that the bus drivers themselves don't really work for the city. Earlier, you said that we have 3 employees in transit that work for the city.
No, I didn't say anything about we had 3 employees. I'm not quite sure where that came from, but that was not from me. At the end of the day, I don't particularly care how many. At the end of the day, I see them driving around our city. They have people on that bus who can potentially have come in contact with someone. They themselves are at risk, which is your concern. And if we're going to adopt a pay policy that includes individuals who are essential critical workforce employees, then they should be included in this conversation as well. And they are.
All right. And my second concern, is there any way that we could do better than $3 and some change an hour?
All right, so let's qualify that. That's just the breakdown. That's just the breakdown per hour. That's an additional increment. This is a $500 monthly stipend. That is how it will be communicated. That is how it's being messaged. It's consistent with what the city of Atlanta has done. In fact, Atlanta's got 5,400 employees who are going to receive this additional stipend, and it equates to $8.2 million over the period of time that they set. From start to finish, $8.2 million. In our instance, if we do this over a 2-month period of time, it's effectively $1.6 million in terms of expenditures that the city will incur. And so, again, that amount is consistent with the city, the capital city. It's in fact more than some cities. Most cities aren't doing anything at this point because of the difficulty in being able to try to manage that. We believe that this is prudent. I think that there are those of you who are on this call, who are here in this meeting today, who believe this is the right thing to do. And that is what is before us, making the decision to compensate our employees for this work over and above what they're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, sir. I'm going to the commissioner from the 4th.
Thank you. A couple of things. When we talk about the transit folks, we are already aware that there's a separate pot of money that can deal with the transit issue. And we just have to line that item up, line the item up that way and put in an application for the money. So it can cover the transit drivers and it can cover the folks that's employees of the city. So there's money available to do that. That's already been per se amount allocated that we can receive. And that came out in an email that was sent from the administrator. Now for our other folks and those folks as well, for as the IE hazardous pay or exposure pay. Chief James was the first one to bring this up in Mayor, to my knowledge, the first to bring this up about our employees. And I've heard it from several other directors as well. And their initial talk was about $7 and some change per hour. I think it's very appropriate for our employees. I mean, Atlanta may be doing something, Savannah, other cities, but we are none of those. We're Augusta. I don't have an issue when we look at what cities are doing, but we don't have to follow them to the letter. I will be recommending to this body that we do $5 per hour for our employees. It's clear that we may have to do the red tape and do the paperwork, but we can get this money back through this COVID-19 legislation. So we just have to go out, do the work, dig through that. As I mentioned to the mayor a couple of days ago, we need somebody designated to search through all these federal departments to see where the money is. The money that was allocated to transfers was $8 million, and that was to Augusta / Port Aiken. And what I hear is that we get $6 million out of that, Aiken get $2 million. That's already designated and been sent out and through the Federal Department of Transportation, whatever you call it. And so that's already there. They've outlined what each city received. And they started at 50,000 people per municipality. So the bottom line is the reimbursement avenues are out there. We just need to dig into it. And I will, whether it's a substitute motion or not, I want to say that we should do $5 per hour for the time frame that we do this emergency. Thank you. And I'll have my hand up again.
Okay. All right, Commissioner from the 5th. Please unmute your microphone.
I didn't have my hand up, but I'll do a second for that motion for $5.
Mr. Mayor, may I get a quick follow-up?
Sure.
Before saying the $5, I did contact the administrator and ask him if he would have finance or whoever run the numbers on the $5 per hour, so we'll know what that will be. And if they did that, I'd like to hear that number now.
All right, Administrator Sims.
Yes, we were able to do that, and that number for all funds is 1.3 million.
Can you repeat that?
For all funds, that number is 1.3 million.
And I want to just caveat that with this one thing that was up. There's money available that we can get the reimbursements from. So, but the thing about it is, and I heard this, I won't say where I heard it from, but if we're going to ask for some money, we got to spend some to ask for some. And that don't mean we want to be wasteful with it, but why we got, and I'll just mention, we talk about the first responders, but ever since COVID-19 came into play, we've had housing inspectors, they out there doing their job. We got the guys utilities, we got the guys from engineering. I see them there every day. And they are working very diligently on a project that I know that I visit almost daily in other projects. So for one time, I want to be able to say, you don't have to be a first responder, but when you're out there in the ditches and the trenches, you are a responder. So I think we should just treat all our folks equally and treat them fairly. And I strongly recommend that $5 per hour in this particular deadly situation that we're in. Thank you.
Commissioner Sias. Again, I'm gonna pose this question to you. You're recommending that there's a second, and you're saying all employees should be treated equally across the board. In this narrative that's been presented to us, you've got some at 100, some at 25, and so are you suggesting everybody's at 100%? Or
let me clarify what you just said about 100 versus 25%. And Administrator Sims, you correct me if I'm wrong. when we talk about 100%, that's talking about all the employees involved. When we talk about 25%, it's not a 25% of the $3.33. It's about, that's an estimate that 25% of employees of that particular department may qualify. Ms. Tracy Sims, is that correct, what I just said?
That is correct.
Okay, so, Mr. Mayor, that's not accurate the way you put that.
Okay. All right. So we got a motion and a second for $5 an hour, which effectively is $1.3 million per month.
Mr. Mayor, before we take a vote now, I thought
I'm
we were
coming back.
discussing.
Yeah, I'm coming
Yeah,
back.
but if we're gonna vote, ain't no sense in coming back if.
No, I'm
if-
not getting ready to vote, Commissioner. Just
Okay,
hold on.
hold on. I'm trying.
Hold on.
I'm trying.
All right, I've got some hands. All right, what other hands do I have that want to speak on this matter? All right, okay, let me just get the hands. All right. Okay, all right, I'm going in this order. I'm going to the commissioner from the 9th, the 3rd, the 10th, and the 8th, in that order. Commissioner from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hope my mic is unmuted. I left it on that way, so I wouldn't have to change it. But I'm really concerned about what I'm hearing. Naturally, this is a dangerous situation. We need to take care of the employees, but we got to be mindful of what we're doing as well. I want to go back to what the attorney mentioned about the 2 positions in his office who involved. Now, if they can work from home, they ain't got to be on the front line. They ain't got to be knocking on door to door to bring no legal information. They got computers and technology and all this other stuff to work for. We need to make sure we're including those people that's going to be out in the public who are risking their lives and their family lives with the situation. That's my first point. The other point is we talked about the sheriff wants $11. Are we going to give everybody $5? Sound like the District 4 commissioner and the administrator have been having a lot of conversation. They you know, it ain't what you say is how you say it sometimes. But still, if they don't talk about this, everybody ought to be talking on the same page. Now, instead of having no meeting, if there'd been a meeting before the meeting. So I'm in favor of supporting the workers, but at the same time, we got to be fair with everybody. I agree. If we're gonna give $5, then let's give everybody $5. We can't get a sheriff $11, then turn around and get somebody else $5, and then turn around and get somebody $3.25. So finance director ought to be answering those questions, not the administrator, but the finance director ought to be telling me where those funds can come from, what those numbers gonna be. I mean, administrator don't do no financing. He may have consulted with finance, but he don't have those numbers. I need to hear them from somebody else.
Well, I think you've heard from Donna as well, but you've also heard from Administrator Sims, who gave the presentation. And I think that again, what you can count on is the fact that he worked hand in hand with the staff and was able to provide us with this information, which is how we got to this point. And so, to that end, if I may, I'm going to go to Director Williams to speak. She had her hand up, and there may be some additional information that she can offer. Then I'll come right back to you. Okay.
Okay, we let Donna speak, and then I go from there.
Yep.
I forgot why I had my hand up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think it was to address the difference between the 25 and the 100%, that those were staffing levels, not to be meant to what you've already explained just then, that it was not 25% of whatever number was approved. Those were done for me to be able to give cost estimates based on the level of staffing that I perceived might be affected.
Okay. Commissioner from the 9th.
Okay, so the other part I addressed about the people who got the technology and the means of working from home, the technology to work at home and do the same job versus somebody on the front line. I think the the legal department talked about at least 2 people. His office ought to be closed. There shouldn't be nobody opening up and coming in there with the technology that most people got. So that's a concern for me now.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid concern. I do not disagree with that. All right, Commissioner from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Williams helped me out. I wanted to hear some more from Donna as well. And this new number, the $5, I know you still can't give 100% guarantee that we're going to be okay because it's all in uncertain times right now with budgets. But what do you feel? What are your thoughts on that? I'm just not feeling comfortable with where we're going to be this year. I want to give our employees something, but I just don't know what level. So what is your thought? What are your thoughts on the new motion from Commissioner Sias?
Is that to Director Williams, Commissioner
Yep,
Davis?
to
Okay,
Ms. Williams.
to Donna.
To Donna.
Okay, what I will offer to you guys is, once again, none of us really knows where we're going to wind up.
Right.
What I can tell you is a small pool of money, as we have gone through, you know, we're closing 2019. And one of the items that we received in 2019 was a FEMA check for the 2014 ice storm. So that was not revenue that was expected, let's say, during 2019. That would have been directly applied to our fund balance. That was $1.5 million. So while it doesn't come out of 2020 budget, it is a pool of funding that would be available to cover whatever is done in the interim until such time as these monies could be reimbursed to us. If they are not reimbursed to us, then we really wouldn't be adding to the fund balance for 2019. We would just kind of be holding the status quo, which in today's world, as we're seeing it right now, holding a status quo is going to be a pretty good thing.
Okay, and do you have any idea, either the mayor or Ms. Williams, when we might know if we're going to be getting reimbursement? Have any indication of any time frame when you would find out if we're going to get reimbursed?
Yeah, so that's very difficult to tell, particularly when we don't know what the end game is as it relates to this pandemic. I think if we take from a historical perspective what happened with the ice storm, again, that happened in 2014, but as soon as we all got here, we were dealing with that. And it sounds like, you know, Donna says she's got a gift for me, that there was another check for $1 million that just came in 2019 that we didn't know about. So I think it's just too difficult to tell that. We don't know when when GEMA is going to be requesting communities to begin submitting reimbursement requests through FEMA. It's just difficult. I think given what we know today, there are a series of things that have happened. One, the Masters didn't happen this week. Number two, we know what that number historically has been from a sales tax perspective. You can couple that with the fact that now we are here and businesses are not operating at normal state. So these are going to be some opportunities and times for us to, tighten the belt a little bit. But, you know, again, we heard good news today. The Masters is going to happen in November. That's our expectation. So that's good news. But I think out of an abundance of caution, but being prudent and good stewards, what we know is that over the last, 5 years, we have ended each year with a budget surplus. That's good. We have been good stewards of those resources. And so we're in better shape than perhaps we've been in the previous 20 years. So I think that's good to at least think about.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to the commissioner from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to echo just a little bit of what my colleague from the 9th said, that it seems like there's been a whole lot of conversation among 2 or 3 people and not among the whole commission. And that seems to
Mr. Mayor, I
happen.
need to speak after you do.
And I would like to verify that whatever we decide on the dollar amount of money, is that the same amount of money that the sheriff's department deputies are going to get, or going to be addressed as a separate item?
Yeah, I think our posture is that there's going to be a motion, which we have one and a second, for an amount, and that amount will be across the board for the organization in these categories of essential critical infrastructure workforce employees. That's a term from the Department of Homeland Security and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency. And so as a result of that, that's that number. We have a calculation of what that is across the organization of $1.3 million. So absent there being another motion, that's what's in front of us at this point. All right, I'm going to the commissioner from the 8th.
And 4th is
coming. I got you. I'm coming back to you.
There's no need for anybody else to talk over me. We've all been pretty good and not being rude and talking over one another, so I'd appreciate it if others would do that as well. So just before we vote on this, I want to get a couple questions answered. First of all, I appreciate Donna for filling us in on the FEMA money that was unexpected for that reimbursement from the ice storm. Hopefully it won't take another 5 or 6 years to get reimbursed for this. But I guess the main question quite a few of us have is, how long would this pay increase be in effect for? Do we have a specific end date?
You can. And again, that's a conversation that was posed to Administrator Sims as we were going through the conversation early about this. Again, in similar cities, some who have done nothing and others who have a begin date and an end date. I use once more as an example because even whether it's our law enforcement, our fire, they saw what happened in Atlanta. They've looked at other examples in Baltimore as well. And there was a begin date of March 30, I believe, for Atlanta, and an end date of June 30. So again, it was effectively over a 3-month period of time, 5,400 employees or so. So it's certainly appropriate, Commissioner Garrett.
And one follow-up question.
Sure.
I'm looking at the list that was earlier today, and I see where the coroner's office is not on that. I believe that would be something that definitely needs to be added, since the coroner and his people are out every day as well.
You certainly can say they should be added to the list, just like the law department was added to the list.
And if they were to be added to the list, what would the end number be?
I'm going to defer that to Director Williams.
I'd have to pull them up. I think they've got 6 or 7 individuals there. So the total amount is not going to increase substantially. I think they work 80-hour weeks. So, and I think it would probably be prudent to staff to do that estimation at 100% instead of just the 25%.
I agree.
Kind of get an agreement. Okay, so I will update my sheet because we've got some others on there with the additions of the law department, the administrator's office, and the clerk. So I could send that back out, but because there are relatively small numbers of employees in those departments, it's not going to be a big change to the total number of the 1.3 for the 2 pay periods.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, hold on a minute. Hold on. All right. Going to the commissioner from the 4th. Unless he decides to waive.
No, I just unmuted. No, I'm not waiving. Number 1, I hear from two of my colleagues saying about so much conversation. Well, I guess I'm guilty of that. When I saw the email, I picked up the telephone and I called the administration. Can you explain what the 25% means? That's exactly what I did. Now, I think all of us have a telephone. All of us know folks' number. So if you have a question, you have the right to ask it. So I don't know what all this so-called conversation going on as if there's meeting before the meeting and between the meetings. So it's as simple as that. I use the tools that we have. Thank you.
You are a tool.
All right. Commissioner, I'm sorry, Director
And
Williams.
you can stick that tool you just mentioned somewhere.
Okay. Let's pause with all of that. This is a public meeting. You're conducting the business of the people in the public, and I would urge that there be a level of decorum when we conduct business this way.
Good. How you doing?
All right. Director Williams, as we go back through this list, the motion is a simple motion, and that is a dollar figure, but there are clearly some gaps in terms of what this basic list looks like from an employee standpoint, as it relates to EMA. As I understand it, that's 100% of EMA, or at least it should be 100% of EMA as opposed to 25. They're on the front lines. 25% of staff, it should be 100% of staff. I can't imagine why they would be any different than fire and 911.
Mayor, we updated this list. I don't have the updated list, but the updated list reflects EMA at 100%.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I don't have that in front of me. So, all right, I'm going to go in this order. The commissioner from the 5th. Commissioner from the 5th.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to say everybody, we've been all around the table. Everybody's given their take on what they think we should be doing. We should be, as you said, thinking about the community, those that are working out something for them. We've got a motion on the floor. I think we need to go ahead and vote on that motion. If it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, we go back to the $3. Now, I think that we should just go ahead and take a vote. Everybody's had a take on this. Everyone's had a take. I think we need to vote. Thank you.
Okay. All right. All right. I've got the commissioner from the 2nd. Commissioner from the 2nd.
Yes. The only issue that I really have really discussed is the length of time. We don't know how long this situation is going to last. And if we obligate ourselves with a certain total down the road, it may be a lengthy process. And then it may put us over the boundaries somewhat. You know, I don't see giving an exact total right now for the, for the hazardous pay. And the other issue I have is I'm not happy with everybody on the list getting hazardous pay. But that's not here nor there. I'm learning to compromise. But I think if we vote on an amount right now with no expectation of what the end total will be, that would be somewhat dangerous for us.
Okay. Thank you for those comments.
And also, Mr. Mayor.
Let me go to the commissioner from the 1st. Please unmute your microphone. Commissioner from the 6th, I do have you. If you'll mute your microphone.
Okay.
Commissioner first, unmute your microphone, please.
Yeah. Hey. You ready for me, Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner from the 1st. He'll unmute his microphone.
He enjoyed talking to himself. Can I talk?
How do you do that, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, you have the floor, sir. Commissioner from the 1st.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, it appears that some of my colleagues are concerned about whether or not we will get reimbursed for the hazardous duty pay. And And I guess one of the questions that I would ask is that is it possible that if we make a come up with a dollar amount, that we could go back and give it to them when this epidemic is over with? Does it have to be for the month of, say, March? Does it have to be given in April? Or if the epidemic is over with in June, can we give it to them in July?
All right, here's what I'd like to do. What we can't do is go retroactive and pay individuals. Here's what I'd like to do. The commissioner from the 5th, without saying that, he's calling for the question. What I'd like to do at this point is we got a motion and a second. We got a motion and a proper second for an amount of $5 hourly pay increase for a period of 2 months. I think the motion should be amended as such for a period of 2 months. And if necessary, we'll come back and revisit it at that time. That gives certainty, a date certain, effective today, ending on what would be 60 days from now, which will be your 2 month period of time. That effectively takes us to June the 6th, I believe. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I did have a question.
All right, hold on.
Staffing.
Hold on. I want to just kind of bring some clarity here. Otherwise, we're just going to be all over the place. All right. All right. So Director Williams, Administrator Sims, that's the state of play in terms of the motion that's before us right now. Those calculations will take us over a 2 month period of time. That's effectively $2.6 million. All right. I'm gonna take 2 more comments, and we can go back and revisit. So we can go back and revisit and clarify this list that some people are not seeing right now and don't have access to with regards to the departments, i.e. the employees that are included in this. But what our objective today was to come and adopt a pay policy. And so to the degree that we adopt the policy, then there's a corresponding amount that goes with that, okay?
Mr. Mayor, there's
All
a
right.
question been called, but that doesn't mean that
I understand.
there's some unreadiness. I mean, this is
understand.
serious. We got to talk about this.
I fully understand that there's unreadiness. Hold on.
We're trying to work it out.
I understand. Everybody's to speak. And so there's a lot of conversation about it. And I want to make sure we have proper debate about this matter. All right. Now, go back to the commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make sure, but for the administrator and for administrator in particular, are we only compensating people, even though they may be in these departments? These are people who are in the elements per se. I may be in this department, whether it's the sheriff department, marshal department, RCCI. Are we looking at ones who are on the job and not just the ones who are maybe working there, but they at the house?
The departments that you mentioned about the sheriff, marshals, RCCI, as well as EMA, those departments were 100% as far as included in the hazardous pay. The other departments we listed as far as like planning, engineering, recreation parks, central service, finance, procurement. We looked at 25% of that department, looking at the employees that are physically working. So we're looking at a different model for those departments.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, Mr. Mayor, that in other words, I could be an RCCI as an officer, and I can be off that day and probably get regular pay. I'll go on vacation, get regular pay. I didn't want to get an extra compensation not being in the workplace, whether I'm on vacation and getting work played, or either just not being at work that day at all and still getting compensated. Just want to make sure these are people who are on the job at that particular time. They're getting compensated and they're in the field per se.
So whether
that's in the building or whatever.
I want to clarify a few things. This is a snapshot in time. We're only having this conversation because of the pandemic that is before us. As such, this is a snapshot in time. And in the event that 5 years from now or 15 months from now, we could potentially come back and revisit this. And as such, we're adopting a pay policy for a snapshot in time that will at the end of that snapshot in time that we determine here will revert back to normal pay. Okay. And so what we don't want is a situation where we're mired in the weeds. This will apply to folks who are physically reporting to work, not working from home. Physically reporting to work. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Now I'm going to go to the commissioner from the 9th, and then we're going to vote. Okay. Commissioner from the 9th.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if we're ready to vote or not. I mean, it's a lot of unanswered questions. There's too many, whatever. This is a pandemic that we're trying to work through. People shouldn't be just worried about paying folks. We need to be getting through this. And those who are actually out there involved ought to be getting the additional pay. But you got people who are not actually out there because they're in a department. There's a lot to be talked about here, and y'all want to go ahead and vote. But if you ain't talked through all this stuff, the price change from $11 to $5 to $3.25 to whatever. We ain't got none of that clear yet, and y'all want to vote. If you don't want to go talk about it, you sure don't want to do no work. If you don't want to talk about it, then you shouldn't be elected. I said that. So, and I take responsibility for saying that. But here I am now trying to get us to talk about it. We ain't got time to sit at home and do it, so we know we ain't going downtown and do it. This thing is serious. This is a lot of money. This is a serious event. We need to make sure we dot the I and cross the T, and we still gonna make some mistakes. I'm sick of people playing games.
So again, I appreciate that. This is let me recalibrate the conversation. This is where we are. Today, the matter that is before us is amending our current pay policy to add a clause that provides for hazard pay for employees who are essential critical infrastructure workforce as provided by the Department of Homeland Security and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. That is what is before us right now.
But you're talking about the people that's essential, essential, Mr. Mayor. But what about those that are not essential? Now you got people that you're adding in that's not essential.
We're the list of individuals who are here. I want to vote on first and foremost the adoption of the policy, and that was the matter that's before us, and that's number one. The second thing that can and should be voted on is an amount. The first piece is, will we adopt this policy that provides for our ability to have hazard pay? That's the question that's before us. That needs to be the first motion.
I make a motion, Mr. Mayor,
First action.
to amend the pay policy.
I second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, this is our posture. We're voting on the amendment to the pay policy, which is the first order of business. We want to do that by roll call vote.
Policy, Mr. Mayor, we have to adopt the pay policy.
That's correct.
Not adopt the amendment. Yeah, it's to adopt the pay policy.
That is correct. That is the motion. Okay. Commissioner from the 6th with a second from the commissioner from the 10th. Motion to adopt the pay policy.
All right. Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Ms. Davis. Ms. Davis?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Fenoy?
Yes.
Mr. Franum?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Syed?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Marion Williams?
Might as well.
Now the vote don't sound right.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Okay, that motion is unanimous.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. The matter that is before us now is what that pay amount is. That's the matter that's before us. And previously, the commissioner from the 4th had a motion of an amount of $5. I don't know what that translates into in terms of monthly pay, but I would submit that that's probably an additional $2, which would probably translate, instead of $500 a month, that's probably an additional $650 to $700 a month, based on the calculation. So again, to that end, that is the conversation now. There was some unreadiness about that, and in particular, unreadiness about who the eligible employees were. And we can have more debate about that, or we can move forward with that motion that we'll ask the commissioner from the 4th to restate, so that everyone's clear on that. And the commissioner from the 5th is who seconded that motion.
Shall I restate that now?
Suspend for a moment. Chair recognizes the attorney. Attorney Brown. Got to unmute your microphone.
Yes,
Attorney
sir.
Brown.
Yes, sir. Mayor, Commissioners, the second motion indeed does have an element of what the pay will be, but the second document that you have that's prepared by the administrator and HR and law department is the declarations. So the amount is a part of adopting the declaration.
Attorney Brown, what document are you referring to?
It's the Augusta
attachment. The attachment from the administrator?
Yes, ma'am. It's
okay.
There's a COVID-19 declaration of extreme conditions. In order to pay the employees, you have to declare, the policy says you can pay them under extreme conditions. So in this instance, the commission has formally declared that extreme work conditions exist.
And where is that document?
It's a supporting documentation under item number 1 on the regular agenda. That says a recommendation for hazardous pay. There's a memorandum from the administrator. Attached is Augusta extreme condition pay policy. And then there's an estimate cost for incremental pay. So there's a 4-page document.
Okay, so we've already adopted the extreme pay policy. That was what the motion was just a moment ago. That's this document that, again, I think everyone has a copy of, that says Augusta, Georgia extreme conditions pay policy. We just adopted that. That was the motion. And is there some additional information, Attorney Brown, that you're referring to?
Yes, the administrator.
Yes.
Yeah. There is a declaration that was prepared. And
it's attached.
And I understood that the forward that.
Okay. Let me. Is that the estimate of incremental pay?
No, ma'am.
No, it's not.
There is a declaration that reported on Saturday. So we can send it to you right now, Ms. Bonner.
You're sending it to me right now?
Yes, I'll send it to you right now again.
Send it to the mayor right now.
I'm stepping away to get the copy so that I can show it on the screen for you.
Okay.
And if you'll still forward that, I'd like to have a copy of it here that I can print out. Everybody just stand at ease for 5 minutes.
Jarvis?
I just forwarded it to you, Mayor.
Administrator Sims, can you hear me? Administrator Sims, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you, Commissioner.
Yeah, I just want you to take into consideration, like the engineering department. I know they're out there still working. I know they have a workforce of more than 25% out there. So look at those departments that may have more people. Utilities department may have more people out there working. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So, like you said, I think y'all count utilities department at 25%. I think they have more people out there. So taking account of those departments that may have more than 25% out there that you put on the 25% rule.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir. The spreadsheet reference the number of employees by those departments. So using your example for utilities, that's showing estimated 88 employees. For engineering, showing about 18 employees.
Mm-hmm.
So
look, I would talk to those people and just check those numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Williams had to raise her hand to the finance director.
Yeah, if it's okay if I chime in, the numbers that you saw on the sheet, utilities actually has a little over, has about 300 and something people. I talked to Mr. Wiedmeyer and he did agree that probably it would affect approximately 25% of his workforce. And
Okay.
that, you know, and like I said, this is an estimated staffing level. It doesn't mean that the same 25% is going to be working
Right.
the whole time. You know, like for my department, there will be some people that will rotate in and out because
Okay.
I need payroll at certain times, and they'll be, all four of them will be here.
Correct.
But then other times there may be only one, but the average is going to be approximately 25% for the entire department. So we've taken the best estimate that we can with what we think is going on. So
Yeah.
it's
Well, yes, ma'am. I understand. I understand.
okay.
If they have one or two over, you'll take care of them.
We'll fix it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Bonner, are you ready?
Declaration, I think I sent it to everyone. They electronically, and to abbreviate what the declaration, I'll ask Attorney Brown if
Madam Clerk, let's let Attorney Brown explain that.
the last portion is what they're actually voting on. Okay.
Attorney Brown.
Yes, sir. The pay policy you just passed stated that is basically a policy mission that when there's extreme working conditions, hazardous pay will be authorized. So that's just a general policy that applies. In this case, we will, as a body, a city, we will have to declare, the governing body will have to declare that this condition is qualifies as one of the extreme working conditions that authorize pay. So you're declaring that the condition exists, and you will be declaring what the amount of pay would be. And the policy itself does have a period of time that this condition is to exist.
Is that the April 6th date through the June 6th date?
On the declaration is left blank. Is section 3.
I see that. I'm asking you, is that the date we put there?
Yeah.
It's the effective date of this declaration shall be. So would that be April 6th?
Yes, ma'am.
And shall remain in effect through June 6th?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to, and that the pay should be $5 an hour. That's what they're voting on now, right?
Well, that's debatable, Madam Clerk. We're
Well-
going to vote on that in just a moment.
Well, I'm saying that's what Mr. Sayas' motion
His motion,
entails.
that's correct.
Question.
All right, Commissioner from the 4th.
In the declaration where we said this effective date, I want to ask the attorney a question.
Sure.
You're putting the end date, which is approximately 60 days out. Did you also include a clause, that period, I haven't had the opportunity to read it completely, that says unless sooner terminated? In other words, it can go to April 30th, but it doesn't have to be. It can be terminated if there's a need. So is that clause in there?
The reality of it is, this declaration, again, had we had time to vet it, it should simply state beginning with the current pay period. And ending, we can do a date certain, which is extremely important, or during the duration of the declaration order. but it should clearly state that from the beginning of the current pay period, which is what date?
I don't have a clue on that one. What I was just saying is, just say, for example, if this thing cleared up before April, whatever the date we'll put for end, then we should be able to terminate it. That was my point, question and point.
Well,
Thank you.
I think, again, it certainly can be terminated at any point in time in the future.
Yes. Yeah.
Attorney Brown.
Yes, if you look back at the pay policy, anything regarding this pay policy can be amended. That was number 4 in the policy itself, that it is amendable. But with the declaration, say 30 days, by some miracle, the situation cleared up and an extreme working condition no longer existed, the mission by an agenda item could simply terminate the declaration and declare an end to the declaration itself. You're not bound to have it for 60 days. And you can also go in before the end of 60 days and extend it if you would.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner from the 9th. Commissioner from the 9th. All right, start over. You're good now.
I'm good now, okay. If that would be automatically, if it ends tomorrow, we would stop the declaration, wouldn't we? I mean, we wouldn't continue to pay people if it's not being used. So extending it would be something that I think the attorney mentioned, that how we can extend it beyond the time. But if it ended next week, that's when the declaration would end, wouldn't it? I guess Mr. Attorney has to answer that.
Let me be clear. We shouldn't be worried about when this is going to end at this point. We don't know when this pandemic is going to end. And in fact, what you heard yesterday was that it is only going to get worse, that we're in the 2-week period of time where you're going to see more death than we've ever seen. And while I don't know if that's true, I know that that's what everybody's telling us. Surgeon General's telling us, Fauci's telling us this, the president's telling us this. At the end of the day, we just voted to adopt the pay policy. And now the question that is before us is an amount. And that's the question that's before us. And you have this document, this declaration document that says we're going to provide, that there's a declaration of extreme working conditions. And subsequently, as a result of that, we're going to provide hazard pay in the amount of $5 an hour. That's on page 4 of the document. The date certain, they can be written in there. So when we adopt this declaration, the question before us is, are we going to vote on the $5? So I've got a motion and a second to adopt the declaration, and included in that would be the amount. We can do it as one motion, or we can have 2 separate motions.
Is that the sheriff department and everybody is?
Everybody will be included in that declaration because you've adopted the policy.
Okay, but the amount, is that for sheriff as well as?
That will be across the organization. Everybody, a single amount. All right, so let's do this. All right, I think the attorney would like for you to adopt this declaration of extreme working conditions. Do I have a motion to adopt the declaration of extreme working conditions? We'll do it in that order. All right, Chair recognizes the commissioner from the 10th.
I unmuted. I was ready to vote.
All right, are you making a motion to adopt the declaration of extreme working conditions?
I make the motion to adopt the recommendation.
Second.
Got a second.
Who was that, Mr. Bobby Williams? Okay,
It was Mr. Bobby Williams.
thank you. For
Roll call vote.
Mr. Mayor,
Declaration
for
of extreme working
clarification,
conditions.
for clarification, are you saying this declaration will include
No,
the
we're going to
$5
vote on
per
that separately.
hour?
We're going to vote on that separately. We're just
Well-
voting on the declaration at this point, and we're going to vote on the amount separately.
And you're going to vote on the termination date, the beginning and the end date separate as well?
No.
because this declaration includes the dollar amount per hour and the effective and the termination date. So
Uh,
that's on the last page. Section 2. Augusta, Georgia employees shall receive an additional, I guess it would be $5 per hour in hazardous pay in line with the budget. Section 3 gives the beginning date and then effective through, that would be the end date. So I'm just asking, are we just?
Madam Clerk, the effective date is today. When we take a vote on this, again, finance and the payroll will work it out as it relates to what that current pay period is. Again, from a declaration standpoint, it will be effective today with an end date of June the 6th. And if it needs to be amended, it'll be amended at that time. Yes.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner from the 9th, State Inquiry.
My inquiry is the essential employees. We talked about that earlier. Those who gonna be on the front line out in the public, or those who got offices and can work from home. Do we distinguish that or not? Frontline people who I'm concerned about, not the ones who can stay at home, who don't have to be out there, who may travel from one point to another, but they don't have to be out there like the firemen, the police, the bus drivers, and that kind of thing. So do we make that determination?
Well, there's been a document provided that effectively makes that determination. But at this point, Commissioner, I'm gonna let each and every one determine for themselves what that is. But you've got the data that supports what, again, policy says it should be. But we're gonna let everyone make that determination for themselves with this next vote. We have a motion to adopt the Declaration of Extreme Working Conditions with a date certain effective today, ending June 6th, with a dollar amount of $5 per hour in hazard pay. All right, Madam Clerk, roll call vote.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Davis.
Madam Clerk, just again, was this for the $5?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, no, ma'am, I can support what the administrator suggested, but not the $5 at this time.
Mr. Fenoy. Mr. Fenoy. Mr. Franum.
No, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett.
No, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan. Mr. Hassan. Mr. Sias.
Yes.
Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Marion Williams.
No, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Franum, you said no. Mr.
No.
Garrett, no. Mr. Hassan.
Yes.
That motion carries 6-4.
Is it over? Is the meeting over?
Well, you asked that some additions be included, that you need to vote on that.
Gotcha.
All right, Madam Clerk, we're going to the first item on the addendum agenda. Item number 1.
Item number 1, discuss approve modified operations for Augusta Transit Department.
Commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, what we done the other day when we voted on this, and pretty much I would say, lack of a better term, led the charge that was against it because we was kind of a little caught in between to say whether the employee was going to get compensated. And at the time, I was assuming that they already had a contract in hand and had the money in hand. And as a result of that, to try to confirm those things after the meeting, I called Ms. Dottery and asked her about it. So she reached out to the vendor, and the vendor sent some relevant information, which came back Friday to try to give us some insight about potentially money out there by the CARES program that's tied to the Corona-19. And as a result of that, we decided to take another look at this and be supportive as best we can. However, I think there's still some questions out there because they said we're in the neighborhood about $8 million, but about $2 million of that goes to North Augusta or to Aiken County. About $6 million come to Augusta, Richmond County. So there still are some criteria about whether we can pay the folks or not and expect to be reimbursed out of that money or what have you. But I did want to say, as a result of that's why I put it back on the agenda, because I do think either way it's worth revisiting and going ahead and approve. But I would be recommending, my motion would be to leave the schedule as is, though, as opposed to changing the schedule.
Commissioner Hassan.
Yes, sir.
There are two matters that were before us regarding that. It was the issue of suspending fares and, again, the holiday schedule. And what is your motion as it relates to that?
My motion is to leave the schedule as it is, and because it's such a short notice and employees have to use the bus, it may inconvenience them. We're only talking about 2 hours a day, but there are people who are looking at it. Leave it as is, and we can suspend the fares.
Okay, we have a motion to suspend fares and continue the current schedule. Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Sir.
Commissioner from the 4th.
Thank you. I'm not with the thing with so I just want to ask Commissioner Hassan something real quick, reference his motion. Commissioner,
right,
did you feel like your motion need to include anything about ensuring the drivers got full pay?
I'm not. Well, let me say in further, Commissioner, I continue to have conversation around this. I even reached out to our finance director, Ms. Donna Williams, talked to her Saturday, done a follow with me this morning, trying to get a handle on this. And I'm just not sure that even with the money that we're getting, that whether we can compensate somebody else's employee. That's why I'm moving away from that. I think we put ourselves in harm's way attempting to compensate somebody else's employee.
All right, I just want to get clarity.
Thank you.
I'll do the second, Mr. Mayor, so it won't die. Did you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
I've got a motion and a second to suspend fares while continuing the current schedule of operations for transit, with a second from the Commissioner from the 5th. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Clark,
No.
Ms. Davis,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fenoy,
Yes.
Mr. Franham,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
No, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias. Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Marion Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries 8-2 with Mr. Clark and Mr. Garrett voting no.
Madam Clerk, item number 2.
Item number 2 is discuss approve the development of a webinar with Augusta small business community.
Commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, what happened after the governor made his declarations the other day, and he identified about 20 businesses that were pretty much that would actually be closed at this particular time, and one or two of them were working half-mast. Some of those businesses was bars, nightclubs, gym, fitness center, so forth and so on. What I did at that particular time, I reached out to Director Rod Sherman to try to give us an idea how many businesses was impacted by this, just to give me a basic outline. What it was, bars and nightclubs came to 60 business. Gym, fitness, and bowling at 32 business. Theater, live performances, 4 businesses. Dining service, a restaurant, private social clubs came about with limited service and stuff, and full service together came to be 413 businesses. When we talk about the hair designers, the body art studios, beauty shops, barbershop, cosmetology school, hair design school, barbering school, so forth and so on, came to 330 businesses. And then when we talk about licensed massage therapists, came to 52 businesses. What I just mentioned was about 891 businesses, for all intents and purposes, have been shut down. And we're not talking about their employees and things of that nature during this particular time. So I want to know the impact of that and what kind of information that we could get to give them some sense to get some relief out there, because sometimes people don't want to go and look for information. With that, my conversation, my thought process when I was thinking about trying to find out some webinars that's out there that can speak to that. And what we were able to find is that, the SBA of the southern region there, Ashley Bell, Mr. Mayor, who you may be familiar with, had already began to compensate businesses and things of that nature. And someone was getting money within 72 hours. And then also just recently, yesterday in the Augusta Chronicle, they were talking about with a University of Georgia and a small business also doing webinars. And there will be a webinar tomorrow at 12 o'clock for the 7th region, which we're in the region 7 at 12 o'clock. So it's not at this particular time where I started out thinking it's something that we may have to lead the charge on. It's more about us now just informing the public that there will be a webinar tomorrow at 12 noon and the numbers and stuff, and put that on our website and put that out in the media. And so, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you may have some additional information, but that's what I wanted to try to get out there, and we'd be involved in trying to get that information to the public.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? So I'll lean in a little bit because what you've raised, Commissioner, from the 6th is consistent with item number 5 below. And there have been a series of conversations with the business community, the broader business community. What we did over effectively a 5-day period of time is conducted a small business survey. You may have seen that on the City of Augusta's website. We polled our entire business community and also pushed that out to the Metro Chamber of Commerce. That survey was completed on Friday of our businesses that have been impacted. It was a 13-question survey, and that data is being provided back to us with the goal of, again, doing a series of things. One, you've taken an approach of having a webinar with our small business regional director, Ashley Bell, who is going to be hosting a town hall for Atlanta as well. We can certainly do that here in Augusta, but part of the survey's goal was to provide us with concrete data on the Augusta Commission as we talk about how we best can help our small businesses of all sectors to be able to not only recover, but to restart and continue to do business in the community. That information should be available to the body here within the next 2 days. That will help us shape our thought processes in terms of how we help businesses going forward. That dovetails into the conversation again around item number 5. So we're talking about it right now around COVID relief fund and recovery efforts. The commissioner from the first has raised this issue with me, as well as the commissioner from the 4th, of how we particularly can use those linked deposit funds in order to be able to get businesses back, whether it's providing microloans, whether it's providing small time grants. And so with that data, we want to be able to do something meaningful and substantial to help businesses in the Augusta community specifically. You may be aware of the fact, again, that the Augusta National provided $2 million to the community on last week. $1 million of those directly for Augusta University Medical Center around testing, rapid response, and their healthcare support services. $1 million to the Community Foundation in partnership with United Way. As a result of that, those resources are spread across the region and not necessarily just specific to Augusta. And so while we may have access to those resources as well, I think it's vitally important for Augusta to do something directly for businesses in our community. And so we look forward to having a broader conversation around that and sharing that information with the commission so that we can take action on providing our businesses with some relief and support so that they can continue all the way down to the barbershops and the hair salons as well, who have been directly impacted. And of course, our restaurants as well, who we've had a series of conversations with. There were almost 500 respondents from the survey, and the data that's been brought back is going to be very useful in helping to shape that. So I'll pause there. I appreciate you bringing this item forward because I think it, again, dovetails very nicely into number 5. And we look forward to getting that information out to all the members of the commission so that we can have some broader discussion.
Mr. Mayor, can I get a response, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate all of the information that you just shared with us. But if and you probably seen the article yesterday in the Augusta Chronicle about this webinar tomorrow and things. Can you find a way to fully get that out to the media so many businesses in this community can take a look at that in the meantime while we're trying to formulate potentially something internally? Because it looks like they in many ways they have some immediate funds in hand within a very reasonable amount of time and things like that. So I think it'd be important if we can take advantage of that because there's a webinar tomorrow at 12 noon and it is basically operating out of Augusta.
Yeah, so that again, we've had some conversations with Ashley as well, Commissioner San, and let's talk about a series of things. So 2 weeks ago, the SBA provided all of our local businesses with an opportunity to apply for low-cost loans. That was already pushed out to the business community. That's already been done. Number 2, what has happened post the CARES Act being passed, the $2 trillion that you're hearing about, on Friday, the federal government, through a series of banks, provided what they call the payroll protection portion of that. The payroll protection portion of that, there were a series of banks that allowed individuals to apply, and that information was also pushed out to the business community as well. So absent that, the webinar will probably be a reiteration of some of those things. And so to your point, we'll send out a communication to the local media and internally to all the members of the commission saying how that works. And what we'll also have Ashley do is provide a specific Augusta town hall call for folks to be a part of as well.
Well, yes, sir, because, I know you want one part of that, Mr. Mayor, to be specific, is one part of it, the economic injury disaster loan, which pretty much doesn't have to be repaid,
That is correct.
So those are the kind of things we need to get to them and get it to them as much as possible. And they probably hear some of that tomorrow as well. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So that covers item 1 and number 5 around the okay. I don't see. All right, Commissioner from the first, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, in listening to some of the comments, not locally, but from small businesses across the country, they say one of the issues that they're running into is that the monies for these loans are given to the larger banks, and the larger banks are working with their customers as opposed to working with a small business that does business with another bank. And they said they have tried to have access to these loans, but they have not been made available. So I think that's a stumbling block that we're gonna run across And I don't know if that's something that we need to address, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed. That if the loans are at the banks and the banks are taking care of their customers first, then what does it put the other businesses?
Commissioner Fenoy, that is a very valid concern. It's one that has been raised. It was no different than raising the issue around the population caps with the $2 trillion. When you talk about counties, again, that are 500,000 or larger, there are not many counties that are that large in Georgia. And so it diminishes the ability to get those appropriations if you don't meet that threshold. The same holds true, again, here locally. You've only got a few banks locally that are in that list of SBA 7A preferred lender banks. Bank of America, which happens to be a big bank, has done the most applications as I understand it. But locally, you've only got Regions and Queensboro who were on that list. All of the other banks were not on that list from a local perspective. And again, that's just information that was brought to our attention just here within the last several days. So Commissioner, I'll go back to the commissioner from the 6th. Commissioner Hassan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's back to you now, sir.
Yes, and so to Commissioner Fenoy's point, what goes back to the mayor, when you think about the survey that you've done, it gives us an opportunity also, as you look at those 500 some odd businesses that you have just mentioned that have done the survey, and other businesses that participate in this process, and we can somewhat attempt to track the success of it. And as a government, if we feel that there's discrimination in that process for whatever reason, we can find to help take that on and saying that we can put our finger on that certain businesses are being discriminated against in regards to this Corona-19 Act, for lack of a better term. So that's a good way for us to track that as well. And doing those things to kind of take some charge of it, so those small businesses won't be out there on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I will tell you that there are a host of issues associated with this. Part of that, the Department of Labor waived all of the affirmative action requirements for any of those resources. So there are a host of issues that are ongoing as it relates to that. And you've got a multitude of groups trying to address those concerns. Is there anything else you'd like to add as it relates to item number 2, Commissioner Son? And
No,
I'm rolling
thank you,
number 5 up into it.
No, thank you, sir, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate it. We just need to try to expedite the process because some of those businesses have enough resources to last all in a month's time, and we need to try to get busy trying to see what we can do to assist them.
Absolutely. All right, Madam Clerk, I think that's all we've got before us. We've talked about number 5 as well, which is what I wanted to do. And if there's no additional business before us, this meeting is adjourned. Commissioner from the 5th.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question about the patch. The governor's executive order allows golf courses to be open. So why is our patch closed? Do you know?
Well, I think you and I, you prompted me with that today. I was not aware that our golf course was closed. As I understood, the clubhouse was physical distancing, but they were still open. That was what I understood. So again, Administrator Sims, can you speak to that issue? Administrator Sims.
Commissioner, I'm
sorry.
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
The question is the Augusta Municipal Golf Course. Why is it closed?
I'll need to follow up with our Recreation and Parks Director, but from my understanding, our park facilities should be closed.
No, sir. The parks are open.
The patch open.
The parks are still open, and that's consistent even with the governor's order. That parks and facilities like that are open. Lakes are open. And so you just practice social distancing, and there's no mandate for the golf course to be closed.
Follow up regarding that, sir.
I think what I'm hearing is that the patch should be open.
Yes.
All right. If there's
Mayor,
no,
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for you, please.
okay, Commissioner from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, it's not a question for yourself, it's just to remind us, and I think the question will be more to the administrator. As part of the governor's positions the other day, he sent out, it ended up being about 4 attachments when it came to us. One of the attachments has something was the order to ensure a healthy Georgia. And 2 of those things on that, in the workplace in particular, he laid out was he was asking about considering suspending the use of personal identification, those PIN number pads and things of those nature for entities that could do that. That was one. Now, here's the one that really is interesting to me, or concerning. I want to know the administrator, are we working on this and trying to deal with this one? And the item number 12 on that, bullet point number 12 among that was discouraging workers from using other workers' phones, desks, offices, or other work tools and equipment. And so as we are bringing people back in and out, it also said for all intents and purposes, people should be using their own desks, their own office equipment, their own computers, and not using their colleagues' computers. And I just want to make sure that we're in the practicing that if we're not currently practicing that.
We will make the adjustment regarding that, Commissioner. We know that in our departments, we try to streamline to have all the departments kind of work in the same area. But since that new change from the governor's office, we will address that and have that those employees that were working at a satellite office go back to that location.
No, thank you, sir.
Mr.
All right.
Mayor.
Commissioner from the 1st.
Yeah, but I have a question for the administrator.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sims, the hazardous duty pay that we approved today, that will also apply to our part-time workers that are working during the virus.
The part-time employees that are working in those departments, say, for example, central services, if they receive hazardous pay and continue to work, it would apply to them.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner from the 5th.
No, I'm good, sir. I'll call you. We're good.
Okay. All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good job, Mayor.
Yeah.